I have always believed that grief has a scent. For me, it smells like burning jasmine. That was the last thing I remembered from the night my parents were assassinated. The faint aroma of my mother's perfume lingered in the air, mixed with the metallic tang of blood and smoke. I was 10 years old, too young to understand the meaning of death, yet old enough to recognize finality. After that night, I stopped being a child. They said it was a robbery gone wrong. They said it was random. But deep down, I knew better. My father had been a respected Omega businessman, honest, loyal, but powerful enough to have enemies. I kept the news clippings, the blurred photographs, the police reports. I read them until the pages turned soft and gray from my fingers. Every night, I repeated their names in my head like a prayer. Until I learned the name of the man who had ordered their deaths, Kang Dae, the Tyrant Alpha, the CEO of K Group, the largest conglomerate in Seoul. Ruthless, untouchable, the kind of man who smiled only when someone else was on their knees. It took me 16 years to gather proof. 16 years of scraping through digital archives, bribing journalists, seducing informants, working as an assistant in places that brushed close to his empire. Every connection, every whisper led me closer to him. And now, at 26, I was finally ready to destroy him. The morning I arrived at K Group's headquarters, Seoul's sky was a cold slate of gray. I wore my most harmless smile and a white shirt that clung to me just right. Soft, unthreatening. A perfect mask. Mr. Kang doesn't tolerate lateness, the receptionist warned as I adjusted my ID badge. Don't worry, I said with a gentle smile. I'm very obedient. The woman flushed a little, then nodded and waved me through. Obedient. If only she knew. Inside the elevator, my reflection stared back at me. Pale skin, soft features, eyes that could melt or kill depending on my mood. A perfect Omega facade, fragile, delicate, submissive. It had taken years to learn how to wear that mask convincingly. Inside, though, I was sharpened steel. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, the first thing I noticed was silence. No noise, no chatter, just the quiet hum of power. Then I saw him. Kang Dae stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a black suit that looked carved for his body. His back was straight, posture predatory, and when he turned, his gaze caught mine like a hook. New recruit. His voice was deep, low, almost lazy. The kind of tone that promised danger. Yes, sir, I said softly. Sung-ho. Marketing assistant. He studied me for a moment, long enough for me to feel stripped bare under his eyes. Something in his expression flickered. Not quite interest. Not yet. Fine, he said. Report to Manager Kim. And don't waste my time. Yes, Mr. Kang, I murmured, bowing slightly before I turned away. But inside my heart was racing. That was the man. The monster. The one I had vowed to kill. Over the next few weeks, I played my part well. The sweet Omega who brought coffee with a shy smile. The efficient assistant who never complained, never disobeyed. I stayed late, learned his routines, observed his habits. He was a man of contradictions, cruel in the boardroom, cold with his staff, but strangely gentle with children and stray cats that wandered near the building. It made him human, which infuriated me. Monsters weren't supposed to have kindness. And yet, every time our eyes met, something inside me trembled. I hated that feeling. I hated how he looked at me, how his voice softened when he said my name. Sung-ho, he said one night as I brought him a report. You work too hard. I gave him a faint smile. I like keeping busy, sir. You remind me of someone I used to know, he murmured, his gaze lingering. Someone who smiled just like that before they betrayed me. I froze. I'm not that brave. He chuckled, a low rumbling sound that curled through me. Brave, huh? You seem fragile. That was when I tilted my head, giving him a look from under my lashes. Maybe appearances lie, Mr. Kang? His smirk deepened. Maybe they do. That night when I lay in bed I couldn't sleep. His voice echoed in my head. His eyes haunted me. I told myself it was just strategy. Flirtation was a weapon. Seduction was a path to power. But my chest felt tight in a way I couldn't explain. 2 months later he invited me to a business dinner. It wasn't unusual, he often took his employees out for networking. But when I arrived at the restaurant there was no one else. Just him, sitting at a private table with a bottle of red wine already open. You're early, he said as I sat down. You said 7. It's 7, I replied lightly. He smiled faintly. Punctual. I like that. The evening passed in a blur of conversation and wine. He spoke about the company, his ideals, his past in vague pieces. I listened, nodding at the right times, laughing when he made a rare joke. Then, out of nowhere, he said, You're different, Sung-ho. I blinked. Different how? Everyone around me wants something. Power. Money. Influence. He leaned closer, eyes dark. What do you want? The air between us grew heavy. My pulse quickened. Revenge, I wanted to say. I want to see you kneel. But instead I whispered, maybe I just want to be seen. His expression softened, and for the first time I saw the man behind the monster. That night, when he drove me home, the silence between us felt charged, fragile, dangerous. Before I stepped out of the car, he said, "If I asked you to stay, would you?" My breath caught. I turned, meeting his eyes. "You shouldn't." "Maybe I should," he said quietly. That night was the first time he kissed me. It wasn't fierce or demanding, it was slow, searching, as if he was asking for permission to feel. And though every part of me screamed that this was wrong, I didn't push him away. When I finally pulled back, I whispered, "You'll regret this." He smiled faintly. "Then I'll regret it forever." After that night, nothing was the same. He became different, softer, possessive. The cold CO began to melt whenever I was near. He sent me home with drivers, worried if I skipped a meal, brushed my hair back when he thought no one was looking. And I let him. Because I needed him to fall. Because I needed to get close enough to kill him. But every time he touched me, my resolve faltered. His warmth, his laughter, the way he said my name like it mattered, it all began to chip away at the hatred I'd carried for 16 years. Sometimes I'd stare at his sleeping face and think, what if I'm wrong? What if he didn't do it? But then I'd remember the photos of my parents. The blood. The silence. The burning jasmine. And I'd promise myself again, this ends with his death. Still, as days bled into weeks, something terrifying happened. I began to fall in love. Love is supposed to feel like warmth. But with Kang Dae, it felt like standing too close to a fire, beautiful, dangerous, and impossible to step away from. It started with small things. He began showing up at my office just to ask about my day. He'd bring coffee himself instead of sending his assistant. Sometimes he'd stay silent and just look at me as if memorizing every breath I took. It was suffocating. It was addictive. One evening, when most of the staff had gone home, he appeared at my desk. He leaned against the edge, arms crossed, his sharp scent wrapping around me like smoke. "You've been avoiding me," he said quietly. I froze. "I've been busy, sir." He raised an eyebrow. "Busy avoiding me?" "I didn't say that." He chuckled low and rough. "You don't have to." I glanced up at him, tall, composed, but with something restless in his eyes. "You're imagining things," I murmured. "Am I?" He leaned closer, close enough that I could feel his breath. "Then why can't I stop thinking about you, Sung-ho?" The air left my lungs. I forced myself to smile, my heart hammering in my chest. "You're my boss, Mr. Kang. It's inappropriate." He studied my face for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said softly, "Then fire me from your mind too, because I can't seem to do that." He left after that, but his words stayed. They followed me home, echoed in the silence of my apartment, chased me into my dreams. Weeks passed, and the line between us began to blur. I tried to keep the mask, the fragile, shy Omega he believed me to be. But every time he touched me, I felt cracks forming. One rainy night, he called me into his office long after everyone had gone home. When I entered, the room was dimly lit, shadows stretching across the floor. He was sitting by the window, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, the tyrant stripped down to a man. "You came," he said softly. "You told me to," I replied. He looked up, eyes glinting with something heavy. "Sometimes I just want to see you." My chest tightened. "That's not wise." He smiled faintly. "Since when have I ever been wise?" I wanted to turn and leave. I wanted to keep my distance. But something in the way he looked at me, tired, lonely, human, made me stay. We talked for hours. About nothing and everything. His childhood, his dreams, the pressure of being who he was. I laughed at one of his rare jokes, and for a moment the world felt simple again. When silence finally fell, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face. The touch was soft, reverent. "Sung-ho," he murmured. "You make me feel like I still have a heart." My breath trembled. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because it makes it harder for me to hate you." He froze, confused, but before he could speak I stepped closer, and for the first time I kissed him. It was supposed to be manipulation. It was supposed to be a weapon. But the moment our lips met, I knew I was lost. His hands came up to my waist, hesitant, almost tender, and when he pulled me closer, the world outside ceased to exist. The rain, the city, the years of hatred, all of it disappeared in that heartbeat. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "Don't ever leave me." And I didn't have the strength to promise otherwise. From that night on, we became something undefined, a secret that thrived in the shadows. He'd find excuses to see me. He'd text me during meetings. He'd hold me in his arms after long nights of work and whisper my name like a prayer. And I let him. I let myself be loved by the man I was born to destroy. Sometimes I'd wake up beside him, his arm heavy around my waist, his face soft with sleep. And in those moments, I'd wonder if I could ever carry through with my plan. Because the truth was, I had fallen in love. And it terrified me. One evening, I went to visit my friend Minji, the only person who knew the truth. She was a hacker, a beta with a sharp tongue and sharper eyes. She had helped me uncover Kang Dae's connections years ago. "You look different," she said the moment I entered her apartment. "Different how?" I asked, sitting down. "Less angry." "That's not good, Sung-ho. You're supposed to be focused." "I'm still focused," I lied. She arched a brow. "Focused on his lips, maybe?" I sighed. "Minji." She crossed her arms. "You're falling for him." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. "Do you even know if he really did it?" she pressed. "All your evidence came from third parties. Nothing solid." My hands tightened on my knees. "He's the only one who benefited from my father's death." "Maybe," she said quietly. "Or maybe someone wanted you to believe that." Her words rattled through me long after I left. But I refused to listen. Because if I doubted, then everything, all the years of planning, the hate, the grief, would crumble. And I couldn't afford to lose my purpose. That night, when I returned to his penthouse, Kang Dae was waiting for me by the window. The lights of Seoul shimmered behind him, cold and distant. "You're late," he said softly. "I was visiting a friend." His jaw tensed. "A friend?" I smiled faintly. "Jealous, Mr. Kang?" He turned, walked toward me and stopped just inches away. His scent surrounded me, intoxicating. "Yes," he said simply. "I am." My heart skipped. "That's not very alpha of you." "It's human," he whispered, his hand brushing against my cheek. "And I stopped caring about appearances the day you walked into my life." I swallowed hard, caught between love and fear. "You shouldn't love someone like me." He smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But I do." Then he pulled me into his arms, holding me like I was the only real thing left in his world. And for the first time in years, I cried, quietly, into his chest, because I didn't know if I could ever kill the man who held me like that. There are two kinds of lies. The ones we tell others to protect ourselves, and the ones we tell ourselves to survive. I was drowning in both. Days passed in a blur of tenderness and guilt. Kang Dae's world had become mine. His office, his home, his nights. We moved like two souls orbiting the same gravity, drawn closer no matter how much I tried to resist. To everyone else, I was just his quiet assistant. To him, I was something he never named but refused to let go of. And to myself, I was a fraud. Each morning I'd wake to find his arm curled around me, his breath warm on my skin, and for one blissful second, I'd forget why I was there. But then reality would return, sharp as glass, and the guilt would crush me all over again. One morning, as sunlight spilled through the curtains, I stirred awake to find him already watching me. His hair was a mess, his shirt unbuttoned halfway, and he was smiling, a rare, lazy smile that made my chest ache. "You're staring again?" I murmured sleepily. He chuckled. "You look peaceful when you sleep. It's the only time you stop thinking too much." I turned, pretending to pout. "And you don't?" He brushed his fingers over my cheek, soft as a sigh. "I only think about you." The simplicity of his words disarmed me. Kang Dae, the man the world called a tyrant, was now whispering confessions like a lovesick boy. I couldn't bear it. Because every gentle touch, every kiss, made the knife in my heart twist deeper. That afternoon, I found myself wandering through his private study while he was on a call. His office was immaculate, shelves lined with files, trophies, framed photographs. My eyes caught on one in particular. It was an old picture of him, maybe 15 years ago, standing beside a man I recognized immediately, Chairman Yu, my father's former rival. My blood ran cold. Chairman Yu's company had merged with K Group right after my parents' deaths. And here they were, smiling, drinking together. My fingers trembled as I traced the photo's edge. So it was him. Kang Dae had known my father's enemies. He had benefited from the merger. That was all the confirmation I needed. Sung-ho. I flinched, spinning around. Kang Dae stood in the doorway, his gaze soft but questioning. I forced a smile. "You startled me." He stepped closer. "What are you doing in here?" "Just looking around," I said lightly. "You never show me this part of your world." His eyes lingered on the photograph in my hand. For a brief moment, something unreadable passed across his face. Then he reached out and gently took it from me, setting it back on the shelf. "There are some memories that don't deserve to be revisited," he said quietly. "Was he important to you?" I asked carefully. He paused. "Once." Something in his tone made my stomach twist. Before I could ask more, he smiled faintly, his expression unreadable again. "Come on. Dinner's ready." But as we ate together that night, his words kept echoing in my head. What once was enough to kill my parents. The next few days I became distant. He noticed, of course. Kang Dae always noticed. "You've been quiet," he said one night as we sat on his balcony, the city glowing below us. "I'm just tired." He turned to me, his hand finding mine. "You're lying." I met his eyes. "So are you." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick, fragile. Finally, he said softly, "If there's something you're not telling me, I want to know. I can handle the truth." My throat tightened. The truth? He had no idea what that word meant to me. "I will tell you," I whispered. "Just, not yet." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll wait." He said it so simply, but the weight of it shattered me. Because I knew that when the truth came out, waiting would turn into regret. A few nights later, I had another meeting with Minji. She handed me a new file, confidential documents she dug up. "There," she said, pointing. "K Group's internal transaction records. Your parents' company shares were transferred to an offshore account 2 weeks after their deaths." My hands clenched. "Whose account?" She hesitated. "It was under Chairman Yu's name, not Kang Dae's." I looked up sharply. "What?" I triple-checked. "Kang Dae's firm handled the paperwork, but the real beneficiary was you. And he's still alive, living overseas." The room spun. "Then, you're saying Kang Dae didn't?" "I'm saying you might be loving the wrong enemy," she said quietly. I pressed my hands to my face, trembling. Years of hate, of obsession, all of it aimed at the wrong man? "I have to know for sure," I whispered. "Be careful," Minji warned. "If he finds out who you really are before you tell him, it won't end well." But I couldn't stop. I needed to know, needed to face the truth no matter how much it hurt. That night I returned to the penthouse, but Kang Dae wasn't there. His phone was off. The house was quiet. When I walked into his study, the door was ajar, and on the desk lay an open folder. My file. Photos of me. My resume. My forged records. Notes written in his handwriting. He knew. I felt my knees go weak. "Sung Ho." His voice came from behind me, calm but edged with sorrow. I turned. He was standing in the doorway, expression unreadable, but his eyes, they were filled with pain. "How long?" he asked quietly. I swallowed hard. "Since the beginning." He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "You approached me on purpose." "Yes." "To destroy me." "Yes." He stopped right in front of me, his gaze locked on mine. "Why?" My voice broke. "Because you killed my parents." He stared at me for a long time, then exhaled softly, almost like a laugh that hurt. "So that's what this was." "I had to know what kind of man you were," I said, tears burning my eyes. "I had to see the monster myself." "And did you?" he asked quietly. "Did you find the monster you were looking for?" I shook my head helplessly. "No. I found someone I can't stop loving, and it's killing me." For a moment he said nothing. Then he closed the distance between us, his hand rising slowly, not to hurt me but to cup my face. "Sung Ho," he whispered, voice trembling for the first time. "You could have killed me 100 times. You didn't." "I wanted to," I choked out. "Every night. But I couldn't." He smiled faintly, a broken kind of smile. "Then maybe, there's hope." Before I could respond, he leaned forward, pressing his forehead to mine. His breath was shaky. "If you still need to finish what you started," he said softly, "do it now. I won't stop you." Tears blurred my vision. "Don't say that." "I mean it," he whispered. "If this is how I pay for my past, then I'll pay it with my life, in your hands." My heart shattered. I pressed my hands to his chest, shaking my head. I can't do it." He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly. "Then don't. Please just stay." And in that moment, I realized I didn't want revenge anymore. I just wanted him. That night, we didn't speak of it again. We simply held each other, both pretending we weren't breaking inside. His heartbeat under my ear was steady, comforting, and terrifying, because it reminded me what I stood to lose. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Kang Dae's face, calm, resigned, heartbreakingly gentle when he told me he would die by my hands if I wanted revenge. No one had ever looked at me like that. No one had ever loved me enough to offer their life for my peace. By dawn, I was still awake. He was lying beside me, arm draped over my waist, his breathing slow, steady. For the first time, he looked vulnerable, no trace of the powerful alpha everyone feared. Just a man who had given his heart to the wrong Omega. To me. And I didn't deserve it. When he woke, he didn't mention what had happened. He kissed my forehead like always, made coffee, and went about his morning routine as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I couldn't carry this silence anymore. If there was even a chance he wasn't the man who killed my parents, I needed proof. For him, for myself, for us. That afternoon I called Minji. I'm going to confront Chairman Yu, I told her. She swore under her breath. That's suicide, Sung-ho. He's powerful, hidden, and paranoid. I don't care, I said quietly. I need the truth. Then don't go alone, she insisted. Tell Kang Dae. The thought made me flinch. How could I ask for his help after everything? Still, when I looked at his number on my phone, I pressed call before I could stop myself. He answered after one ring. Sung-ho. My voice shook. There's something I need to do. Something dangerous. There was a pause, then, where are you? I can handle it. Where? His tone left no room for argument. I sighed. Chairman Yu's villa. Another pause, then the faint sound of him exhaling. I'll be there in an hour. The drive to the villa felt endless. I could feel his tension beside me, quiet, controlled, but simmering. He hadn't asked why I was going. Maybe he already knew. When we arrived, the gates opened too easily. The place was eerily silent, the garden overgrown, the air thick with the scent of pine and decay. Stay behind me, Kang Dae said softly. No, I said. I have to do this myself. He didn't argue, but his hand brushed mine, a silent promise that he was there. Inside, the house was dim, filled with dust and forgotten luxury. We found Chairman Yu in the library, sitting in a leather chair, older but still sharp-eyed. Well, he said, smiling coldly. The prodigal Omega returns. I was wondering when you'd come. My pulse roared in my ears. You knew who I was? Of course, he said smoothly. Your father was a fool but a clever one. You have his eyes. My voice shook. You killed him. He smirked. Killed? No. I cleaned up the mess he created. He tried to expose corruption in my company, thought honesty could win in this world. He underestimated me. I took a step forward, trembling. You destroyed my family. Necessary sacrifice, he said simply, swirling his drink. Business is never clean, child. I barely noticed Kang Dae moving until he was in front of me, his tone low and lethal. You ordered the hit on Mr. Park? He said. You smiled. And you executed it, didn't you? Or so the boy believes. Kang Dae's jaw tightened. I never touched his family. I refused the job. I built my empire cleanly. You used my name to cover your own crime. The realization hit me like a blow. You knew. He looked at me, his eyes full of grief. Not then. I found out years later, after it was too late. By the time I traced the truth, you were gone, and you had buried the evidence. I turned to you, rage and heartbreak warring in my chest. You made me hate the wrong man. Yu's smirk didn't falter. Hate is useful, my dear. It blinds you. Before I could respond, Kang Dae's voice cut through the room, cold as steel. You'll answer for everything. Yu's expression shifted. For the first time, fear flickered there. But before Kang Dae could move, you pulled something from beneath the table. A gun. Everything happened too fast. I shoved Kang Dae aside as the shot rang out. Pain exploded in my shoulder, hot and blinding. He caught me before I hit the ground, his voice breaking. Sung-ho. Blood soaked through my sleeve. The world tilted. I could barely see him, just his face, pale with fear, his hand pressing against the wound. Stay with me, he whispered, desperate. Stay, damn it. Behind him, there was another gunshot, a scream, and then silence. When I blinked again, you was on the floor, motionless, and Kang Dae's hands were trembling. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital room. The world was white, quiet, sterile. My shoulder ached, wrapped in bandages. And beside my bed sat Kang Dae, asleep in the chair, his fingers still intertwined with mine. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, unshaven, but still heartbreakingly beautiful. When I stirred, his eyes snapped open. Relief flooded his face so raw it nearly broke me. You're awake, he breathed. I tried to smile. Barely. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to mine. Don't ever do that again. I laughed weakly. You would have done the same. He sighed, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. You saved my life. You saved mine first, I whispered. More than once. Silence stretched between us, full of words neither of us could say. Then softly I whispered, I'm sorry, Dae. He looked at me. For what? For everything. For lying. For hating you. For almost killing you. His eyes softened. You did what you had to do to survive. I don't blame you. You should. He shook his head slowly. No. Because even when you hated me, you still couldn't hurt me. And that's how I knew I'd already lost my heart to you. My throat closed up. You really forgive me? He smiled faintly. You're not the one who needs forgiving. He leaned forward, brushing his lips against my forehead, gentle and lingering. In that moment, all the lies, all the hatred, all the years of grief, they began to crumble. A week later, we attended Chairman Yu's trial together. The evidence Min Ji had gathered was enough to expose everything. The forged documents, the payments, the hired assassins. He confessed on the stand, too old and too tired to keep pretending. When the sentence was passed, I didn't feel the triumph I expected. Just peace. Outside the courthouse, Kang Dae wrapped an arm around me as the crowd of reporters shouted his name. He didn't care. He looked only at me. What now? I asked softly. He smiled faintly. We start over. If you'll have me. My eyes stung. I've always had you. I was just too blinded by pain to see it. He cupped my face, his gaze tender. Then let's not waste another moment. When he kissed me there, in front of everyone, the world finally felt still again. The rain, the noise, the years, all washed away until there was only him and me and the fragile miracle of forgiveness. That night, as we stood on his balcony overlooking Seoul, I leaned into his arms. The city lights flickered like stars below us, and his scent, warm, steady, familiar, filled the air. I never thought I could love someone like you, I whispered. He smiled against my hair. And I never thought I'd be loved by someone like you. I looked up at him, at the man I once swore to destroy, and realized that sometimes love isn't about forgetting the past, it's about choosing a future worth living for. And for the first time in 16 years, I wasn't haunted by ghosts. I was finally free. The morning light filters softly through the curtains, painting the room in a golden haze. Kang Dae's arm is draped over my waist, his warmth pressing against me as his breathing rises and falls steadily. For a brief moment, everything feels peaceful. Too peaceful for someone like me whose life has been built on deception, vengeance, and longing. I study his face, the small creases near his eyes, the faint scar along his jawline that I had never noticed before. It feels surreal how a man so feared, so ruthless, could look this human when asleep. I remember his words from last night, that he wasn't the one who ordered my parents' death, that he'd help me find the real killer. My heart still aches with doubt, but something in his eyes had been too genuine, too raw to ignore. Was I wrong all this time? Stop staring. Kang Dae's voice comes out low and hoarse, his eyes still half closed. You'll make me fall for you all over again. I freeze. You're awake. I've been awake, he murmurs, a soft smile forming. You were looking at me like you're trying to memorize me before I disappear. A soft sigh escapes me. Maybe I am. He sits up slightly, his hair tousled, his chest bare beneath the sheets. Sung-ho, he says, voice serious now. Let's finish this. Together. You deserve the truth. By afternoon, we're sitting in Kang Dae's private study. Files, old case reports, and surveillance photos are scattered across the mahogany desk. The air between us is heavy with anticipation. He slides a file toward me. This is the original report on your parents' deaths. The hit wasn't authorized by me or my company. My hands tremble as I open it. Then who? Kang Dae leans forward, his expression grim. It was orchestrated by someone who wanted to destroy both of us. My father. The words hit me like a thunderclap. I look up at him, disbelief flashing in my eyes. Your father? He nods slowly. My father was still running the company then. He was ruthless, far more than I ever was. He believed your parents' business threatened ours. When I took over, I found out about it, too late. I feel my stomach twist. So you knew. I found out years later, he admits. And I've been searching for evidence since. I didn't tell you because I thought you'd never believe me. My heart pounds. The rage, the grief, the longing, all of it swirls inside me like a storm. You should have told me, I whisper. I know. His voice is low, regretful. But I was afraid to lose you before I even had you. Tears well up in my eyes. All this time, I've hated you for something your father did. He reaches across the desk, taking my hand. His touch is steady, grounding. Then hate him with me, he says quietly. Let's finish what he started. Let's make him pay. Days turn into nights as we dig deeper into the past. Kang Dae uses his connections. I use the information I've gathered over the years. Together, we uncover a web of corruption that traces back to his father and a few of his loyal executives who profited from my parents' deaths. It's a dangerous game, one that brings us face to face with the past neither of us can fully escape. One night, as we're reviewing documents, I glance at Kang Dae, exhaustion evident in his face. Why are you helping me this much? I ask softly. He looks up from the files. Because I love you, Sung-ho. And I'll do whatever it takes to see you free from your pain. Something inside me shatters at his words. My whole life has been about revenge, but he's showing me what it means to heal. The night we finally confront his father feels like a scene from a nightmare. The old man sits in his darkened mansion, surrounded by guards, but Kang Dae's presence commands attention. When I step forward, the older man's eyes narrow. So you're the Omega who's turned my son against me. I'm the Omega whose parents you murdered, I reply coldly. He smirks. Business is business. Your parents were in the way. The words cut deep, reigniting all the pain I'd buried. You destroyed a family for profit. Kang Dae steps beside me, his gaze cold and sharp as a blade. And now you'll answer for it. For once, I see fear flicker in the old man's eyes. Kang Dae's men restrain him as the police, whom we tipped off earlier, storm the building. The old tyrant is taken away, cursing his son's name. When it's all over, I can barely stand. Kang Dae catches me before I fall, his arms wrapping around me tightly. It's done, he whispers into my hair. It's finally over. I press my face against his chest, my tears soaking through his shirt. For the first time in 16 years, I can breathe again. Weeks pass. The scandal rocks the media. Kang Dae steps down temporarily as CEO, citing the need for restructuring. But to me, none of that matters. We've both lost and gained something unexplainable, a love that bloomed from ashes. One morning, as I water the small garden on the balcony of his penthouse, he comes up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. You're smiling, he murmurs against my ear. I don't see that often. I chuckle softly. I think I forgot how to for a while. He tilts my chin up and kisses me, slow, tender, full of unspoken promises. The kind of kiss that feels like a new beginning. When we part, I whisper, "Do you ever regret meeting me?" He shakes his head. Not once. Even if it all started with lies, you're the truth I want to live with. My heart swells. Then let's live it, I say. No more revenge. No more pain. Only us, he finishes. And for once, it feels real, the love, the peace, the quiet joy between us. Months later, I stand beside him at the grand reopening of his company. The chaos is gone. His name, once feared, is now spoken with respect. When the ceremony ends, we sneak away to the rooftop, watching the city lights sparkle below. Kang Dae slips his hand into mine. You know, he says, smiling, I used to think I didn't have a heart. Then you proved me wrong. I laugh softly. I used to think I didn't have a future. We face each other, the cool night air brushing against our skin. But we found one, he murmurs. Together. When his lips meet mine, it feels like every wound finally healing, every scar finding its place in the story of us. The world below moves on, unaware of the two souls who found solace in each other's chaos. And as the dawn breaks across Seoul, I know, this is no longer a story of revenge. It's a story of love reborn from pain. Of me and him. Sung Ho and Kang Dae. Forever.